Bill.
Thank you, Jim, and good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Bill James, and it's a pleasure to be with you this morning for the APCUG virtual conference. What I'm going to be speaking on is the Windows boot disk and also the Windows 8 recovery disk. Um, so hopefully you'll be get something out of this. I developed an interest in this just recently, and I'll tell you the reason why in a few minutes. But if you have any questions or any thing you'd like to add to the conversation, please feel free to enter that in the chat box. Jim will be monitoring that, and I will as well. So we will answer as soon as we see the information. But anyway, if you've purchased any recent tablets or not tablets, but any recent uh, machines that are being marketed as Ultrabooks and even the new Microsoft Surface tablets, you'll find that they like something that we've come to know as a CD drive or DVD drive, which in the past we were able to use that to be able to boot our computers if we had any kind of problems with them. And also, most computers also came with a set of disks that you could be able to boot your machine. Well, that's seemed to have gone by the wayside recently with the uh, smaller devices. Um, so the reason why you need a boot disk is because of these Windows-based laptops and ultra lights and tablets that are thinner and lighter, which has caused the CD and DVD drives to disappear. Windows 7 and Windows 8 operating systems really have been designed to be able to boot from an external device. Another reason is because we have cloud-based media. Our media contained on the device's internal drive. In other words, there's a partition that is dedicated for the recovery media. So I have a little step-by-step. So what is it? A boot drive or a or disk that has been specially formatted that can be used to start a disabled or non-responsive computer. A boot drive is also our disk that has tools to assist in diagnosing and or repairing a disabled or non-responsive computer. And they can be created from any Windows 7 or Windows 8 computer. So how do you do it? Well, there's several ways. You can acquire an external DVD drive or a flash drive. If you're going to get a flash drive, I would suggest getting one that is 4 gigs or greater. You can create the drive using a Windows 7 or Windows 8 computer. It doesn't have to be the computer that's actually disabled. And it will also contain tools where you can access from that recovery disk that we're going to make to restore it or repair the computer. There's a question here, can a boot disk be used on a different computer from the one which was created? And the answer is yes. It doesn't have to be the one that is actually disabled. Any Windows 7 or Windows 8 computer can be used for that purpose. I think Rick answered that question. Yes, it can, and that's a true statement. So, making a boot disk step by step. And this method will create a USB drive that is bootable. You can then copy the contents of an operating installation disk, Windows 7 or 8, onto the disk to create a portable installation drive. Now this is the one that we're going to create just a generic boot disk or flash drive. And if we'll go through this step by step, and then towards the end of the presentation, I will also discuss the one that's kind of unique to Windows 8. But right now, this is the one that you can use for Vista 7 or Windows 8. So what you do is first is acquire yourself a suitable flash drive, one that make sure that it's sufficient size. And what I have uh, a 4 gig is perfectly suitable for that, but you can get the larger ones. I have an 8 gig here, which I use. They're pretty inexpensive, but you go to you begin by opening a command prompt with administrative privileges, and make sure that when you do that, you right-click on the command prompt to make sure that it's open in admin privileges. If it's not, then you're not going to be able to do what we're doing here. And a good clue is that when you open your command prompt and it comes up, it should say System 32. If it's in System, if the prompt says System 32, that means you're in administrative privileges. Alan is asking a question. Often flash drives come with built-in software, usually backup software. Should it be deleted or should we format the flash drive? Well, actually, as we go through this, what we're going to do here will actually delete any information that's on that drive. So you don't have to format it at this purpose, because the process we're going to be doing will format that drive. So that's another thing, is that you can't have anything else on this drive. It has to be, it's going to, when we're finished here, it's going to be a dedicated boot drive. So you can't use it to store additional files or anything like that. So once we've got the command prompt with administrative privileges, the next thing we're going to do is open the disk management utility. And you can do that by just typing in at the command prompt diskpart, D-I-S-K-P-A-R-T. Okay? And then after that, you will want to display the connected disk by typing the command list disk. And as you see here, this is a screen print of the command prompt. And as you can see at the very top, we are in we're in administrative privileges. And as I told you, you see C:\Windows/System32. And then that's where I typed in diskpart, D-I-S-K-P-A-R-T. And then it came up and gave me Microsoft Diskpart version 6.3.9600 and copyright information. And it told me what computer I was on. And then the next step, remember I told you, was to type list disk, L-I-S, that's 2 words, and it shows all the disks that are installed on the computer. So the one at the very bottom, that disk 7, is my flash drive, and that's the one that we're using to create our boot disk. And of course, then it'll return another command that says that you're in the disk part. Okay, we have some more questions here. Jim is confirming whatever's on the flash drive or SD card will be lost, and that's true. Boot disk can be used on a different computer if this, okay, that's more or less what we've said. Mine shows, okay. 6.3 is a Win8 machine. That's true. The machines that I created this demonstration on actually is Windows 8.1. So that's why we have a different version. If yours is showing 6.17, probably is going to do the same thing. It's just an updated version here in Windows 8. So our next step will be we're going to select a USB drive by entering the disk number from the previous step. If you remember, my flash drive was indicated as disk 7. And so here, I'm going to select that drive by entering the disk number from the previous step. And the next step is clean the flash drive by entering the command clean. Now that's going to erase everything that's on that disk. Our next step to create the bootable partition, we'll do the command create partition primary. Now these commands that I'm giving you that are written in the bold, those are the actual commands that you will use to in this process. Select the new partition with the command select partition 1 and press enter. That will activate the partition. And then after that, the next thing you will want to do is format the USB drive with the command format fs equals FAT32. When you press enter, the program will work for a few minutes, and note that the progress of that process will be shown in percentages. And then once you've done that, you assign the USB drive letter with the command assign and to give the thumb drive a letter designation. And then after that, you just type exit to end the disk management program. So in those few simple steps, you've actually created a bootable drive. Now the next thing you'll want to do is to copy the operating system that you're going to be using. So once your USB drive has been made bootable, you can copy over the installation files for the operating system that you want to install. Windows, it'll be Vista, Windows 7, or Windows 8. And you can do that by just actually dragging and dropping those files using the file manager in Windows. And if there's any drivers that you have that that's specific to that system, such as a video card, you might want to add those as well. Let's see, we have Liz Orban is at the Macintosh Users Group. Disk part from a command prompt window can repair many hard drive problems that the graphical disk manager cannot fix. I would say that's a true statement. One thing, too, I found is that if you use this method just by typing in the commands from the command prompt, it seems to be a little bit more straightforward than going to the graphical interface when you actually type in disk manager disk management, and you get this graphical screen which shows a lot of information at the top, and then it shows the drives that are actually physically installed. But in trying to navigate through that, it gets a bit confusing. In this way, each one of those commands are very specific, and you get the desired results without having to actually figure out what the click makes and this sort of thing. So if you just follow the process that I just demonstrated, you'll find yourself getting a really clean process that you can use over and over again. What specific files needs to be dragged and dropped from File Manager? Well, what we were saying is that's the operating system. So if you have a partition that's on your machine that actually is the recovery uh, partition, it would be those files that you would drag over to your boot disk. You're just making a duplicate of what's already installed. If not, then you need to get your installation disk that you have, um, that you can copy those necessary files over, because what you want to be able to do is get into a the repair mode or safe mode or whatever you need to do in order to get your machine up and running again. Um, is this presentation recapturable? I don't have a zip drive that is dedicatable at this time. Um, I'm not sure if I understand what you're saying. What you need is actually this is Anthony Adams, get a flash drive that you can dedicate to this process, because you're not going to be able to use it for anything else. Um, and it doesn't have to be a very large one. Like I said, this one that I have here is like an 8 gigabyte, which is more than sufficient to copy the files. The Pierre Darman is asking, should you copy the contents of the Windows 7 or 8 installation disk? I would say yes. Oh yes, Anthony, that's true. Liz said that with these this whole presentation will be on YouTube in a couple days, so you can be able to follow the steps step by step. All right. Now, with the advent of Windows 8, and I'm pretty sure everyone is probably aware, if you've installed Windows 8, that you actually do not get any physical um, CD or anything like that. Is that Windows 8, if you even buy it at the store, you usually end up with a little cardboard box with a key in it, and you actually go to the web to download the software. So you have to have an internet connection and all that. But likewise, is that if you run into difficulties, then you really don't have anything to rely on other than a Windows 8 recovery disk. And as you're installing it, you'll be prompted at some point to actually make a recovery disk. And if you don't take the time to do that, then you can go back and create the disk. So here we will talk about that. Now, Pat Anika has said you can get the ISO files from the Microsoft link here, and that would be ideal for the what would be the files that we would want to be comping to that flash drive. But now ISO files also require that you have some special software to get them to work. So I didn't go into that problem or that situation. Copying the contents of the Windows 7 or 8 installation DVD will not give you a bootable DVD, but you might like the documentation files. Other software can be used to copy these DVDs. Image burn is a great free utility for making copies of DVD. And that's a true statement, because and I probably misled you, because you really cannot copy the contents of the Windows 7 or 8 uh, uh, installation software to the boot drive, because that don't work. You really need to have an ISO file. All right. So the Windows 8 recovery disk. To fix Windows 8 using a CD, DVD, USB drive, or an external hard disk drive, create a recovery disk or use a recovery partition. And one of the things you should do before you get started is to check and see if you have a recovery partition and it's already installed on the computer. And you can do that by selecting the charms bar and typing by typing the command um, right click, typing the command for the command prompt, and then right clicking on the command prompt and then select run as administrator. And then to do that, once you get the command prompt, you type REC IMG space / show current and press enter. And what that really is asking is REC IMG stands for recent image. So if you get a message that there is no active custom recovery image, then you will need to create one. And you can also, that will create that image on your hard drive. But if you, once you've got the recovery disk made, you can always go back and delete that recovery partition. And to do that, if you want to reclaim the space using this process, you can by just typing delete the recovery partition greater than delete. Fred says, I'm lost after the format fs equal FAT32. I still don't understand what files need to be copied to make the USB drive a bootable disk. Fred, at that point, we can go back. It was already made a bootable disk. And format the USB drive with the command format fs equals FAT32. When you press enter, the program will work for a few minutes, and progress will be shown in percentage. And then you assign the drive letter and type exit to enter in the disk management program. At that point, the drive that we've created is bootable. So all you would need to do is copy over any installation files for the operating system. Now, as it's been pointed out, that we're talking about installation files that have already been currently um, um, that's been currently installed. I mean, that you currently have. Uh, that's on another media that you've used. So, so there shouldn't really be a problem with that. And then the other thing, I guess maybe what should confuse you was drag and drop the files using your preferred file manager. Well, that's from an existing disk or partition that's already identified as a recovery or boot media. And then we said copy over any drivers that you might need during the operating system installation. So if you have a computer that has a specialized video or audio card, then that's where you would want to copy those files because they would not be included in the bootable media that you're using. I hope that answered your question. Okay, so we're talking about doing the Windows 8 recovery disk. And so as I said, we're going to type in RECIMG space / show current and press enter. And what that is, that's going to identify whether or not you have a custom image already installed on your computer. And if you do not, then you'd have to do that. Okay. So this is what you will see when you do that. You type in at your command prompt uh, RECIMG space / show current. And then it will come up, and if it comes up and says there's no current custom image with an error code, then you'll have to go through the process of creating that image. And so here are the steps to take to do that. It says, so as we were saying, although a CD and a DVD is a good option, you should consider something a little bit more flexible, such as a USB flash drive. If your computer does not have a recovery partition, you'll need to set one up before creating the recovery disk. And that's what we've already determined, that in this case we didn't have one. So to do that, you're going to open the command prompt with administrative privileges and make a folder for the image using make directory space C : / refresh image and press enter. Okay. And then the next step would be to as you see, this is a prompt that you would get. And again, remember that the flash drive or SD card that you're using will be wiped clean in this process. And then once we've gotten that done, to create the recovery drive, we just need to again to type into our search in Windows 8, type in recovery, and then select settings, and you'll see a prompt that says create a recovery drive. Agreeing to any prompts, enter your administrative password. in the recovery drive tool, this is important, check the box for copy the recovery partition from the PC to the recovery drive and click Next. And here is a picture of what you'll find in Windows 8. See, in our search, we've typed the word recovery, and then we select settings. And when you select settings, it will show create a recovery drive on the left-hand side. And that's what you want to click on. And then you will see a screen that will display the size of the recovery partition. You need to ensure that the USB flash drive you're using is big enough and connected to your PC. If you're intending to use an external hard drive, make sure you've created a dedicated partition of sufficient size for this purpose on the drive. Now, Windows will actually identify will actually see the USB or the external hard drive that you have connected to your computer. And then once you have that done, you select the USB drive you want to use as the recovery drive and click Next. Create and wait. Follow any on-screen prompts, and when you're done, click Finish. And it's just a wizard that's in Windows 8 that will just prompt you through the necessary steps. Now, if you prefer to use a CD or DVD, and this could be a good idea if you think your USB device might fail or you misplace it or lose it, you'll need to follow a slightly different set of instructions. But make sure that you have a writable CD or DVD in your drive. And where the difference is that after clicking create a recovery drive, make sure that no boxes are checked, specifically the copy the recovery partition box. And then click Next, create a system repair disk with CD or DVD instead, which will be the next prompt that you'll get once you've unselected create a recovery drive. So with this option selected, the remainder of the steps are the same as long as the recovery drive will fit on your CD or DVD. Now, should you ever need to use the recovery disk, you just need to insert it into your computer's USB drive before booting up. From here, uh, you just follow any of the on-screen instructions to boot the computer using the disk. Select the languages and settings and choose a recovery option. Okay, I see that Tom is asking the same thing that Fred asked. With your operating system, there's you probably receive, depends on the computer. If it's a computer that was manufactured, then it has what was referred to as a recovery disk. And it's those files that we're talking about when we were discussing the first option, creating a boot disk to have the necessary files to get your computer restarted. Um, so those are the ones that you want to copy to that particular drive. Um, there's no particular order other than the fact when you put you have to make sure that when you put the boot disk or boot flash drive in your computer, that you might have to go into the BIOS to make sure that that is the uh, drive that's selected when you boot up. In most cases, it will find it, but if it doesn't, if you put the boot disk into your USB and you start the computer and it doesn't find it, then you need to go into the BIOS and select that as the boot drive. And then from there, there will be just a series of prompts that will lead you through the process of getting your computer started again. Um, I don't know. And that's what Jim says. You may need that's your BIOS to have the right drive boot before your hard drive. So that would be the boot order that we're talking about. But as to the files that you need, um, that's dependent on the operating system that you're using and whether or not you have those particular files on hand. If not, what I would suggest do is go onto the Microsoft site and specifically inquire about those particular files. And someone said again that they might have to there might be ISO files that you use. As someone's pointed out, there's an easy solution for booting from ISO files that you can simply copy to the USB key. It's called Xboot. I'm not familiar with that, but using and creating ISO files, I think probably needs to probably be a separate topic at this point. Pat says boot order should be USB first, then CD drive if present, then disk 0 or SSD if you have one. That's correct. So, conclusion. What we just discussed for the Windows 8, this works for Windows 8 and also the RT tablet. And creating a Windows 8 recovery disk is really something you should set time aside for to complete. And like I said, if you didn't do that when you first installed Windows 8, you can always go back and do that just by going to the search and typing in recovery, and then it will lead you to the steps to recreate the recovery disk. But you don't know when it might prove a vital tool in restoring your computer without forcing you to resort to a reinstallation or quick restore disk, both of which are solutions that will delete any user data you have saved on your system drive, unless you sensibly utilize secondary partition for personal documents and data. Better still, the creation of a Windows 8 recovery disk works both for standard Windows and the RT alternative. Windows 8, when you actually use the recovery media, when you to create this USB drive, you'll find there's a whole slew of tools that you can use to restore your computer without losing your data. It's kind of an image file that Windows 8 is building on the fly as you use the computer, and it will restore the vast majority of the information that is saved to that image. So that's a kind of that's a real plus. Um, let's see what else here. Many machines allow you to set a one-time boot override, usually by pressing F12. Not familiar with that, but that's good information. Lots of bundle backup and recovery tools in Windows 7, Windows 8, and Windows 8.1. I quit paying for the fancy third-party software like the Cronus True Image. That's a true statement because Windows now has its own a pretty spiffy backup, plus this this image information that we were talking about, particularly in Windows 8. And if I recall, there's something similar in Windows 7. Is the purpose of this USB disk to just boot a computer that will not boot normally, or to allow the reformat of a hard drive and reinstall the operating system? Fred, it's used to boot a computer that won't boot normally. That's the whole purpose of it. It's to restart. If you find yourself one day, you turn your computer on and you get nothing but a blue screen or no screen, then you have an issue where your computer is not booting up properly. So in order to fix it, you need to have what's referred to as a boot disk, which will allow you to boot into the operating system, at least a portion of it, that will allow you to make whatever repairs necessary to get you started again. Sometimes this occurs when you've installed some software, not so much anymore, but it has happened, or you've installed a new driver that has actually caused your computer to crash. And when that happens and you find yourself, when you try to restart it, it won't start, then the only resort that you have is to use a boot disk or a flash drive. And the whole purpose of this presentation was the fact that many of the new machines do not have DVD or CD drives anymore. So what do you use to reboot your computer? Well, you either have to have another external hard drive or a flash drive to do so. So that's the whole purpose of this presentation. And I apologize if we didn't go into sufficient detail, but that's something that I will try to do next time when we present this. We'll just add more to it. But I think if you follow the steps that we presented at the very beginning, you will be able to create a functional boot drive. And also, if you follow the steps for creating a Windows 8 recovery disk, you will be able to also create a functional Windows 8 recovery disk. There's a question here about UEFI, which is on the newer computers is the replacement for the old BIOS. And from what I've seen on the UEFI, you still have the same option to go in and select which boot disk that you, which boot sequence that you want to use. I mean, that didn't change just because it's a UEFI. The UEFI is a whole different interface that does that accesses your drives quicker. I don't know all the details. I know on my little Surface I still have a boot sequence. And Stu asked that question. And will the USB boot disk just take you to a command prompt? It really should take you to a series of tools, actually. It'll be more than just a command prompt, because it will take you to a menu where you can go in and select um, uh, how to get into Windows. If you want to get into Windows Safe Mode or whatever, it'll actually give you a menu where you can decide what you need to do in order to get your computer restarted. Thanks, Betty. Um, that's really what kind of prompted me to put this together, because I have a Surface tablet. And also, a few weeks ago, a member of our club had an Ultrabook that actually crashed for whatever, had Windows 8. There was no USB, um, I'm sorry, there was no CD drive or anything to actually get that computer started. And we used a flash drive that we had created to actually get back into the operating system. Fred, I hope I've answered most of your questions. I can do some more research for you if you would like, and send that to you. I would also, Pat says, I would also recommend you have some diagnostic software, see portable apps also present on the USB drive for additional troubleshooting. That's a good idea. Um, if you're using Windows 8 and you're using this Windows 8 recovery disk, Windows 8 has some built-in diagnostic software that you can use to troubleshoot. Okay, Fred, I'll do that. Um, It should be pointed out, Dick Vogel writes, it should be pointed out that while you can use a boot disk created on another computer, it should be the same version of the OS as the system you are booting to. That's a true statement. And then Jim and Pat agree. Pat says, yes, if it's 64-bit computer, then you will have to have a 64-bit um, computer to make the boot disk, and vice versa. If it's a 32, you have to have a 32-bit. That's a good point that I didn't make clear. But it doesn't matter whether or not it's a Windows 7 or a Vista, a Windows 7 or Windows 8 computer. That doesn't matter. But whether it's a 64-bit or 32-bit does. It was my pleasure to do this, and hopefully that you will get some benefit from it. I think, particularly if you download the slides and follow those simple instructions that were the step-by-step instructions, you will be able to make the boot disk or the recovery disk that I discussed. Anthony, I'm sorry, XP, no, it's a whole different animal. Although you can make a recovery disk or boot disk, but it has to be specifically for XP. And I did have instructions for that, uh, for making a Windows XP, what they refer to as an install drive. I didn't include it in this presentation, but there's some simple instructions that you can use. See, Pat. Well, thanks, Pat. Says this virtual conference is almost as much fun as being there in Dayton. The free Windows 8.1 Enterprise Evaluation and free Windows 8 Enterprise Evaluation can be used to fix and restore Windows 8 Core Pro and 8.1 Core Pro respectively if correct bitness is used. Well, 32 or bitness is 32 or 64 is what she's referring to. Hi, Bill. Since helping a lot of newbies, I've now resorted to making recovery disks and taping it to the back of their monitors for future use. Too often these disks get misplaced, and this works. No one looks at the back of their monitors that often. Thanks, Betty, for the compliment.
All right, Bill, thank you.
Well, thanks everyone here. I was just about to say it's about time for us to wrap this up. And I really enjoyed the chat on the sidebar. There's lots of good information there as well. So it was my pleasure, and hope to do this again real soon. And Jim, that completes my presentation.
Okay. Let me stop the recording first.